Hey everyone, today we're looking at 27 absurd marketing tricks alcohol companies use to sell more TEG, and some of them are honestly wild.
When alcohol meets marketing, logic dies of liver failure. 1. The doctor's prescription for drunkenness. In the 1930s, when America's Prohibition hangover was still throbbing, alcohol companies needed a new disguise. Their solution? Pretend whiskey was medicine. Distillers rebranded themselves as pharmaceutical suppliers, complete with respectable doctors writing prescriptions for therapeutic bourbon. Pharmacies became mini-bars where patients could treat stress, toothaches, and the tragic condition of being sober. Whiskey was suddenly the miracle cure for everything except hangovers, which, ironically, it caused. This wasn't fringe quackery either. Millions of prescriptions were issued legally. Imagine walking into CVS today and getting a bottle of Jack Daniels with your antibiotics. It worked so well that when Prohibition ended, the booze industry didn't even bother changing its marketing strategy. They just dropped the pretense and kept selling medicine for your bad days. 2. The beer that promised a beach body. In the 1950s, beer companies faced a problem. Men were getting self-conscious about beer bellies. The solution wasn't to suggest moderation. Oh no, it was to claim beer prevented obesity. Schlitz, Pabst, and Miller started marketing light lagers as fitness drinks, with ads featuring shirtless men lifting steins like dumbbells. "Keeps you fit," one tagline boasted, as if carbonation built muscle. Some even called beer liquid bread, as if that was a nutritional endorsement and not a warning label. Health experts protested, but ad execs countered that hops were natural, and therefore practically kale. It was the era when people smoked doctor-approved cigarettes, so selling beer as a diet plan fit right in. Nothing says fitness like a six-pack that replaces your abs. 3. The booze-soaked baby boom. In the 1960s, alcohol ads decided motherhood needed a cocktail. Liquor companies went after women with surgical precision, rebranding whiskey and gin as glamorous coping mechanisms. "You've earned it, Mom," declared one print ad, showing a woman surrounded by screaming toddlers and a martini that could drown a Barbie. They turned household chaos into a marketing opportunity, convincing millions that mixing gin with orange juice wasn't day drinking. It was self-care. Some ads even called vodka the modern woman's helper, which sounds like a slogan for a robot maid but meant drink until bedtime feels closer. It was the original wine mom movement, decades before social media hashtags existed, proof that the best marketing strategy is to tell exhausted people their vices are just hobbies with better glassware. 4. The manliest beer campaign in history. In the 1970s, beer companies decided masculinity needed a slogan and a mustache. Brands like Schlitz and Budweiser launched campaigns declaring beer to be the drink of real men, complete with growling voiceovers, lumberjack imagery, and enough testosterone to power a Harley-Davidson factory. The message was clear: if you didn't drink beer, you might as well hand in your man card and start knitting. One ad even claimed, "You're not just drinking beer, you're proving something." What exactly? That you can crush aluminum cans and emotional vulnerability in the same night? The irony is, these hyper-macho ads were usually written by guys in Manhattan offices sipping white wine spritzers. Yet it worked. Beer sales skyrocketed as men everywhere believed their self-worth came bottled in a 12-pack. It's marketing genius and cultural insanity, the only time fragile masculinity had a designated brand sponsor. 5. The whiskey that sold fear. During the Cold War, paranoia wasn't just a national pastime, it was a marketing opportunity. In the 1950s, several whiskey brands started using anxiety itself as a sales pitch. "The world may end tomorrow," warned one print ad, "so enjoy tonight with our finest bourbon." Essentially, they turned existential dread into a limited-time offer. TV spots showed mushroom clouds fading into scenes of happy couples clinking glasses, proving nothing cures nuclear terror like a double shot on the rocks. Psychologists called it manipulative. Advertisers called it patriotic reassurance. Some campaigns even featured military imagery, subtly suggesting that supporting your country meant supporting your local distillery. So while scientists built fallout shelters, whiskey makers built slogans. It was the only time in history when the answer to "how do we survive the end of the world" was "drink more." 6. The low-calorie wine that lied. In the 1980s, the fitness craze collided headfirst with the hangover industry, and the result was diet wine. Yes, in an era of jazzercise and leg warmers, marketers claimed you could sip your way to a slimmer waistline. Brands plastered calorie counts on labels like they were nutrition bars, boasting only 90 calories per glass, while conveniently ignoring the sugar, alcohol, and the fact that most drinkers poured 4 glasses per sitting. Some even used fake science, suggesting wine-boosted metabolism. One company ran ads with women in leotards doing aerobics beside bottles of Chardonnay, because nothing says healthy lifestyle like sweating out last night's Merlot. It was all nonsense, of course, but people bought it. It was the golden era of self-deception, when you could convince yourself you were drinking responsibly as long as your wine was on a diet, even if you weren't. 7. The beer company that invented Santa's liver. Long before Coca-Cola made Santa jolly, beer companies made him drunk. In the early 1900s, Christmas ads for brands like Budweiser and Schlitz featured Santa hoisting mugs of ale, red-faced and clearly more buzzed uncle than holy gift giver. The idea was simple: beer brings holiday cheer. Literally, ads encouraged families to leave bottles out for Santa, implying that milk was for amateurs. In some versions, Santa even thanked specific breweries for keeping spirits bright. It was festive alcoholism wrapped in tinsel. When Prohibition hit, the industry swapped Santa for Old St. Nick's Temperance Tonic, pretending it was non-alcoholic. Spoiler, it wasn't. These ads turned Christmas into a bar crawl disguised as a tradition. So next time someone says, "Christmas spirit," remember? That spirit once came in a brown bottle with a foamy head and a public relations hangover. 8. The Champagne for Children campaign. Yes, this really happened. In the 1960s, a French soda brand called Baby Cham sold itself as champagne for kids. Ads showed cartoon deer serving bubbly drinks to smiling families, and slogans bragged it was the little bottle of cheer. The company cleverly targeted parents who wanted their children to feel grown up, normalizing the idea of kids clinking glasses at dinner like tiny debutantes. American distributors caught on, and soon Baby Cham appeared at parties, marketed as the family-friendly fizz. It was just sweet pear cider, but the packaging, glasses, and cork pops were pure alcohol mimicry. Pediatricians were horrified, but sales soared. It blurred the line between innocence and inebriation so effectively that decades later, soda companies still copy the formula with mocktails and kid beers. It's the most successful example of gateway marketing in history, because nothing says future customer like training wheels for alcoholism. 9. The beer that promised a better marriage. In the 1950s, advertisers realized there was one thing stronger than alcohol: marital guilt. Beer companies began targeting husbands with ads suggesting that a man who brought home a six-pack was basically a hero. "Show her you care. Bring beer," declared one campaign, featuring smiling wives serving mugs of froth like trophies of devotion. The not-so-subtle message: you don't need to communicate or help around the house. Just keep the fridge stocked. Some even ran scientific pieces claiming moderate drinking improved marital harmony. Translation: buzzed people argue less because they're too sleepy. These ads worked brilliantly, turning domestic tension into a sales strategy. The modern version would be like selling Wi-Fi routers with the slogan, "Fix your relationship, just stream something." It's a reminder that the most successful marketing trick of all time is convincing people that love, peace, and emotional maturity can all be found in a cold bottle of beer. 10. The vodka that sold purity. Vodka companies in the 1980s faced a branding crisis. How do you market a drink that tastes like nothing? The solution: must pretend that's a feature, not a flaw. Absolute's genius campaign turned emptiness into elegance, selling the absence of flavor as a sign of sophistication. Their minimalist bottle, framed with halos of light, looked more like a perfume ad than a liquor one. Competitors joined in, calling their products pure, clean, and refined, as if vodka were holy water distilled by monks. It wasn't long before vodka equals virtue became gospel. Ironically, while the ads promised purity, the drink was being mixed with everything from Red Bull to spray cheese at frat parties. The dissonance didn't matter, the illusion did. Vodka became a lifestyle, not a liquor. It was the first time in marketing history that tastes like nothing became an expensive compliment. 11. The gin that pretended to be classy medicine. When gin started losing its social status in the 1940s, too many soldiers, not enough socialites, marketers had to rebrand it fast. They began calling it the thinking person's drink, claiming botanicals like juniper, coriander, and angelica root offered digestive benefits. Suddenly, gin wasn't what your grandpa drank in the shed. It was what cultured people sipped while reading poetry. Ads featured women in silk gowns and men quoting Shakespeare, all while slowly ruining their livers. Some brands even slipped in phrases like herbal restoration, as if every martini came with a doctor's note. It was pure linguistic gymnastics, turning a bathtub spirit into a botanical tonic. And it worked. Sales doubled, and for the first time, gin wasn't just alcohol, it was a wellness routine, a very dehydrating one. But still. 12. The Beer for Breakfast campaign. In the 1930s, before nutrition labels ruined everyone's fun, brewers pitched beer as a breakfast drink. The logic? It had yeast and barley, two things vaguely associated with health. Ads called it liquid nourishment and suggested it gave strength for the day's labor. One campaign even showed a construction worker eating eggs and bacon with a pint of lager, the caption reading, "Start right, work strong." Some brands went further, marketing beer specifically to mothers and manual workers as a source of vital energy. It was like Gatorade with a hangover. Nutritionists protested, but brewers argued that milk spoiled faster. And technically, they weren't wrong. The fad finally faded when someone noticed that breakfast beers led to lunch naps and unemployment. Still, for a brief moment, America believed in the dream of a balanced breakfast with hops. 13. The champagne that promised social status. No drink has ever sold delusion quite like champagne. In the early 1900s, marketers realized most people couldn't afford luxury, but they could afford to pretend. So they started selling cheap sparkling wine as champagne for the people. Ads showed working-class couples toasting in small apartments with the tagline, "Taste the life you deserve." It was the original Instagram filter, a way to make Tuesday night feel like the French Riviera. The trick worked so well that bubbly equals fancy became cultural law. Even today, we associate cork pops with celebration, not carbonation. Ironically, the majority of what people drank wasn't from Champagne, France at all. It was carbonated sugar wine from New Jersey. But marketing turned geography into aspiration. The message was clear. You may not have a yacht, but you can drink like someone who yells at waiters for sport. 14. The liquor that invented the bikini barmaid. In the 1960s, when subtlety took a vacation, beer companies discovered the oldest trick in the marketing book: objectify women, sell booze. Brands like Carling and Miller flooded billboards with bikini-clad beer girls, their job being to smile and hold something frothy. It wasn't about taste, it was about fantasy, the promise that drinking a lager would somehow summon models to your backyard barbecue. The irony? The ads were often aimed at married suburban dads who hadn't seen a pool party since Eisenhower. Feminists protested, but the industry doubled down, calling it playful. Eventually, laws restricted such ads, but the damage was done. Beer was no longer a beverage. It was a lifestyle accessory for men who believed charisma came in cans. It was marketing so effective that it survived changing decades, becoming both a cultural icon and a permanent facepalm moment in advertising history. 15. The rum that sold tropical freedom. When post-war America grew tired of gray suits and commutes, rum marketers smelled opportunity and coconut. Brands like Bacardi began selling rum not as a drink, but as an escape plan. "Break free," one ad whispered, showing a man tossing his tie into the sand. Every sip was a vacation, every bottle a one-way ticket to island life, conveniently available at your corner liquor store. It was genius emotional manipulation, turning discontent into consumption. The ads featured beaches, sunsets, and locals who suspiciously looked like models from New Jersey. People didn't want rum, they wanted to feel untethered. And for a few blissful minutes between sips, they did. It was the perfect illusion, rebellion in a bottle, hangover included. Because nothing says freedom like oversleeping work with sand still stuck in your shoes. 16. The beer that sold patriotism by the pint. After World War II, breweries discovered a foolproof sales tactic. Slap an American flag on the label and call it freedom in a bottle. Budweiser and Coors ran ads claiming beer was part of the American way of life, showing soldiers cracking open cold ones like they were defending liberty itself. Patriotic jingles blared, "For those who built America," while conveniently ignoring that most breweries were German-founded. During the Vietnam War, some even launched Support Our Troops six-packs, donating pennies per case to military charities while pocketing millions in goodwill. It was a masterclass in emotional marketing. Beer is democracy, barley is bravery. Never mind that drinking too much of this freedom made more people crash pickup trucks than fight tyranny. By the 1980s, flag-wrapped cans became tradition. Forget civic duty. Apparently, the real way to honor your country was by belching in red, white, and blue. 17. The wine that invented relaxed culture. Before wine mom memes ruled Facebook, there was the 1970s Me Time campaign. Brands like Francia and Gallo told women that a glass of wine wasn't indulgence, it was therapy. Because you deserve it became a mantra, turning post-work exhaustion into a lifestyle. Commercials showed housewives ignoring chaos in slow motion while soft jazz played. The implication: forget your husband, forget the dishes, just sip your way to serenity. The campaign worked so well it rewired an entire generation's relationship with stress. Wine became an identity, not a drink. Fast forward 50 years, and you can still buy mugs that say "Mommy's Juice." It all started with a 1973 billboard featuring a woman smiling into the distance with a rosé in hand. She wasn't relaxing. She was being marketed serenity by the glass, complete with a corkscrew and a quiet scream. 18. The whiskey that promised respectability. In the 1950s, whiskey had an image problem. It was the drink of cowboys, not CEOs. So ad men decided to civilize it. Brands like Seagram's and Canadian Club began depicting executives sipping neat whiskey in mahogany offices, surrounded by books they never read. The slogan, "The mark of the man who's arrived." It was genius, turning liver damage into a status symbol. Every pour became proof you'd made it. The irony? Most of those refined men were just factory foremen with sideburns and credit debt. But the illusion stuck. Whiskey became shorthand for success, and business meetings turned into disguised happy hours. Even James Bond joined the marketing effort, making Scotch look smoother than silk. It was all a mirage, authority in a tumbler, ambition with an aftertaste. By the time reality hit, half the country's boardrooms smelled like oak barrels and bad decisions. 19. The beer that sponsored space. In 1969, when humans landed on the moon, every brand wanted a piece of that cosmic glory, including Budweiser. Their ad campaign proudly declared, "For the men who made it happen," showing astronauts toasting with foaming mugs in zero gravity, which, of course, was physically impossible. They even filed patents for space beer, a beverage that could supposedly be consumed in orbit without exploding. NASA didn't ask for it, nobody did, but the ads were unforgettable. They sold beer as progress, implying that the same nation that invented moon landings also invented happy hour. The best part? Budweiser later sent barley seeds on the space shuttle to study brewing potential on Mars. It was part science, part PR stunt, and completely absurd. Because nothing says humanity's next frontier like asking, "Can we get drunk in space?" 20. The wine that marketed to monks and hippies alike. In the 1970s, a brand called Blue Nun became America's favorite imported wine, not for its taste, but for its marketing schizophrenia. The label featured a serene nun, implying holiness, but the ads screamed disco-era excess. Commercials showed dinner parties with polyester suits, lava lamps, and the sophisticated choice of Blue Nun Riesling. It was both spiritual and sinful, God's juice with a side of glitter. The genius was in the contradiction. It made suburban drinkers feel cultured without having to learn anything about wine. You didn't need to know what Riesling meant, just that the bottle had a nun and tasted sweet enough to mask regret. It became the go-to drink for boomers trying to feel European in Ohio. By the 1980s, Blue Nun sold millions of bottles worldwide, proving that the holiest miracle of all is effective branding. 21. The liquor that sold ice cubes as luxury. In the 1950s, most Americans didn't have ice makers, so whiskey companies turned frozen water into a status symbol. Ads showed perfect crystal cubes clinking in glasses like diamonds, with captions such as, "For those who've arrived, on the rocks." The subtle message: If you could afford ice, you could afford elegance. Bartenders even invented rituals, giant trays, polished tongs, dramatic pours, all to elevate something your freezer now does automatically. The marketing worked so well that entire cocktail trends revolved around the chill. By the time fridges caught up, the idea was locked in. Sophisticated people drank cold. It was absurdly brilliant, selling style through temperature. Only in mid-century America could melting water become a mark of success. And somewhere, an ad executive probably toasted that with a lukewarm bourbon, thinking, "We just sold them ice." 22. The beer that sold itself as breakfast for champions. In the 1940s, one company decided to make beer the morning's most important meal. They launched a campaign calling it the perfect start for the working man. Posters showed miners, farmers, and mechanics downing a pint next to their bacon and eggs, as if hops were part of a balanced diet. Ads bragged that beer contained vitamins, minerals, and energy, conveniently skipping the hangovers and unpaid bills. One brand even pushed the slogan, "Beer, nature's liquid bread," as if yeast made it health food. For a while, it worked. Taverns opened early, selling liquid lunches to men on their way to work. It was industrial America's idea of self-care. Drink before labor, because reality is too heavy sober. The campaign ended only when public health officials stepped in, declaring that liquid bread was closer to liquid disaster. But for a glorious, blurry decade, beer was breakfast. 23. The rum that sold colonial nostalgia. In the 1950s, rum ads went all in on romanticizing colonialism. They painted island life as one long beach party where smiling locals happily served cocktails to vacationing Americans. Slogans like "Discover Paradise" and "Where Time Stands Still" ignored that time standing still usually meant poverty and exploitation. The most famous campaign came from a rum brand featuring a white explorer shaking hands with native islanders, both grinning like the world was one big resort. It was cultural tone deafness distilled. The ads promised adventure and authenticity, even though the closest most drinkers got to adventure was spilling their daiquiri in a lawn chair. Still, the formula worked. Escapism sells better than ethics. For decades, the Caribbean wasn't a place. It was a marketing mood board where history came with a twist of lime and denial. 24. The whiskey that pretended to be time travel. When the 1980s arrived, whiskey marketers realized nostalgia was stronger than any proof label. They began selling heritage as an ingredient. Ads featured foggy Scottish hills, stoic men in kilts, and slogans like "Untouched by Time." The irony? Most of those brands were barely 30 years old, bottled in New Jersey. But Americans bought the fantasy. They weren't drinking whiskey. They were sipping ancient tradition, conveniently aged for exactly 12 months in an Indiana warehouse. The commercials even used grainy black and white filters to look historical, while the actors wore costumes that belonged in a Renaissance fair. It was the cinematic version of liquid lying, but it worked beautifully. Whiskey wasn't just alcohol. It was a ticket to a simpler, fictional past. And for anyone nostalgic for a history they never lived, that glass of heritage hit smoother than the truth ever could. 25. The hangover-free beer that lied boldly. In the 1990s, a few clever breweries decided to solve the world's oldest complaint: hangovers. Their pitch? A beer so pure you'll feel great tomorrow. Ads showed people waking up fresh-faced, jogging, and laughing over brunch, as if drinking lager was the secret to self-improvement. One brand even claimed its formula purified the blood. Spoiler, it didn't. The only thing it purified was your bank account. Customers quickly realized the ads were less science and more sci-fi after waking up with headaches so bad they could hear colors. Regulators stepped in, but by then, the myth was complete. Clean beer became a buzzword still used today for gluten-free or organic marketing. It's the same promise repackaged for modern guilt. You can drink your morals and feel virtuous doing it. Hangover or not, the real buzz was in the branding. 26. The vodka that sold rebellion in a bottle. By the 1990s, vodka was boring, clear, cold, corporate. So one genius campaign decided to make it punk. Smirnoff and Absolut began marketing themselves as the drink of rebellion, urban, edgy, anti-establishment. Billboards featured graffiti, models in leather, and neon chaos under the slogan, "Absolute Freedom." Ironically, it was all written by middle-aged executives in suits sipping lattes in Manhattan. But the illusion worked. Young adults thought buying a $20 bottle made them revolutionaries. Clubs turned cocktails into statements, and the counterculture got drunk on commercial rebellion. It was the most brilliant contradiction in marketing history, selling conformity through the illusion of defiance. The truth? No one ever started a revolution with a cosmopolitan. But in the 90s, everyone wanted to believe that rebellion came chilled, garnished, and sold in duty-free. 27. The beer that claimed it made you smarter. In the 1970s, one ambitious brewer took liquid courage too literally. They ran ads claiming moderate beer drinking sharpens wit and stimulates creativity. Their proof? A totally fictional study from the Institute of Refreshment Sciences. Commercials showed writers, artists, and thinkers brainstorming while raising frothy mugs of genius. They implied Hemingway wrote "The Old Man and the Sea" after a six-pack. Of course, the reality was closer to man drinks, man naps, man forgets nap was 6 hours long. Scientists called it nonsense. Sales called it record-breaking. For years, beer was marketed as brain fuel, until someone noticed too much of it turned debates into karaoke. Still, the dream persists. Every generation wants to believe brilliance can come in a bottle. It never has. But advertising made it sound one sip away. And once again, we've proven that alcohol marketers were just as drunk as their customers. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel and hit that like button because sobriety is boring, but irony is forever.